Good morning, squad. Dustin Jones here, older adult lead faculty, and we're going to talk about nutrition for older adults. What really matters, what doesn't matter as much, and a useful resource that y'all can give to your patients. This conversation around nutrition, I think, is one of the most common questions that we will get within our older adult level one and then just in our live courses as well is what do we say about nutrition? How do we give some solid advice? What can we say based on our license, right? To help people fuel everything that we're asking them to do. Because what will become apparent as you bring this fitness forward approach to older adults is that you're bringing some high intensity resistance training, you're doing some intervals, you're increasing their overall physical activity levels. And if this is new to them, the vast majority of folks are not going to be fueling or nourishing their efforts. And so we want to set these people up for success. We also don't want to overwhelm them. I think it's a very kind of delicate balance. And so there's a few things we really focus on. I'll drop in the comments of this video of our new nutrition resource. So this is a 2-page handout that is patient centered that you can take. It has the Ice Physio branding on it, but you can take, print out, and hand off to a bunch of your patients. John Wright Polk's watching this right now. He gave a bunch to Hyphen Georgetown members, and those folks absolutely ate it up. But I want to talk through 3 big things that we hit on with this nutrition handout and why that may be important. The first one is building a healthy plate. So, building a healthy plate, there's so many, I think, government initiatives to define what is good for our bodies and what we should eat, right? Some of them are very complicated, some of them are very simple. But the Healthy Plate Initiative, from our perspective, is a really easy thing to comprehend. And what it does for this population, particularly, is understand portions, and not necessarily that they're eating too much of one thing, but they're commonly not eating enough of a lot of things. Older adults statistically are malnourished individuals. And then when you come in with your fitness forward approach, you're adding on to that deficit, right? Which, if we're trying to build muscle mass, we're trying to fight sarcopenia, we need fuel, particularly protein. But the Healthy Plate Initiative, I think, is very effective and very simple for people to comprehend. What that is half of your plate is going to be fruit and vegetables. All right. So just getting more of a plant based diet for a lot of folks is going to be very helpful. 1/4 of that plate to be whole grain. What's important to know with this group of people, and for some of you all watching this or listening to this podcast, is many of us grew up thinking half of our plate should be a whole grain, right? It should be the rice, the oats, the potatoes, a couple slices of bread, right? These folks grew up with heavy on the starches, and the recommendations now are that we may want to cut that back a little bit, right? Not completely eliminate it, because you'll need some of that to fuel your fitness forward approach. However, 1/4 is going to be good to go. So half fruits and vegetables, 1/4 is going to be kind of that starch whole grain, and then 1/4 is going to be some type of protein: fish, chicken, eggs. Red meat is okay, right? We want to be kind of careful with having that with every single meal, for example, which is very common where I'm from in West Virginia, and where I'm living now in Kentucky. But 1/4 of your plate to be protein, and then on the side I have a glass of water, something along those lines. Very easy graphic to comprehend, but I think that's a really good place to start, because that's going to go ahead and reorient these individuals to shift more to a plant. I shouldn't say, when people hear plant based, they think like a vegetarian diet. That's not what we're saying. We're just saying bump up fruits and vegetables relative to whole grains, which is usually what we're talking about with this population. So that's the first one. The second one is protein. We've talked a lot about protein on this podcast, in our course. It is incredibly important for all of us as humans watching and listening to this, but it's even more important for older adults. When you think about sarcopenia, when you think about frailty, when you think about losing your strength that could influence your independence, we need to lift heavy things, and we need to eat in a manner that's going to support our muscles to do the things that we need to do. And protein is going to do that. And out of any macronutrient, this is the one that folks typically are under consuming. I encourage you, if you have never tracked your protein for a few days, do so, and it will be absolutely surprising for many of you all. If you are regularly training, if you are working out at a high intensity a few days a week, it's a really good idea for you to be consuming 1 gram per pound of body weight per day. That is very arbitrary unless you actually track this. You calculate that number. All right. Like for me, I know I need to hit 205 grams. That's my goal every single day. It is very difficult to do that. I get absolutely stuffed. I have to supplement with the shake, or I have to be very smart with how I'm consuming different foods and with satiation as well. And so when you hopefully first get your folks to track what they're consuming, they are probably going to be under consuming even to the government recommended guidelines, which for humans is going to be zero point 0.8 to 1.2 grams per kilogram of body weight. The 1.2 grams per kilogram of body weight is going to be the equivalent of zero point 0.5 grams per pound of body weight. All right. So in this handout, we have this broken down into two recommended levels. One is if you're doing regular strenuous exercise, shoot for 1 gram per pound of body weight per day. If you are not doing regular strenuous exercise, you're shooting for zero point 0.5 grams per pound of body weight. What is the science behind these numbers? All right. So, the science behind these numbers is there is consistent literature showing that older adults are going to have more resistance to building muscle, anabolic resistance. And so they need a higher dose of protein to get some of those pathways going to build muscle and to fight sarcopenia. You will see some studies that will use the zero point 0.8 grams per kilogram of body weight, the lower end of that government recommendation, and the upper end is 1.2. And the older adults that take that 1.2 grams per kilogram of body weight per day, they're going to respond better. That hypothesis is starting to be tested even more so to these upper limits, like a 1 gram per pound of body weight per day, to where these individuals can consume more. They're going to respond more in terms of building muscle mass, and it's not necessarily harmful for these individuals. There's a lot of concern about, too high of protein intake, and that really hasn't shaken out in the literature of a really legitimate concern for many individuals. So, with this being said, 1 gram per pound of body weight is a lot. We are giving this recommendation anecdotally, knowing that the vast majority of folks that still are trying to hit that number, that are tracking, they're still probably not going to get that number, but they're going to get higher than what they were before. So I'm giving that 1 gram per pound of body weight confidently, knowing that they're not going to go over that number, and the vast majority of folks are not even going to achieve that. In this handout, we also give some easy protein choices. And what I like about these choices is one of the biggest issues around protein, trying to hit these protein numbers for us, but then also older adults as well, is going to be satiation, right? You get so full that you can't consume anymore. And so this shows some relatively, I think, low volume snacks and foods that pack a big punch in terms of protein per serving. Cottage cheese, fish, Greek yogurt, some of those things that we can sub in for folks. It also speaks to protein supplementation, whey protein, for example, which for a lot of folks that I work with and make those recommendations, they will end up having to supplement with some type of shake, and that is okay. I definitely don't want them to just consume protein shakes and protein infused waffles and bars and Pop Tart, like all the things, right, that have protein in them. We're not going for that, right? We want to get from natural sources, but when we need to supplement, it is perfectly fine and safe to do so. So there's some helpful recommendations for protein in there. Now, the last one, and I think it's probably one of the most influential in these people's quality of lives, and one of the least addressed is going to be hydration. Most older adults are malnourished. They're also dehydrated and not consuming enough liquids. And this is a challenging conversation for a lot of folks, especially if they have some type of urinary incontinence issue on board, where they're concerned about leaking. They don't want to go to the bathroom as often. They have a difficult time controlling their output, if you will. And so there's some tactics that we can give these folks to make sure that they're hydrated and then also reduce some of the issues that they will often face. One is consuming enough liquid earlier on in the day. What typically happens, and this probably happens to you. It definitely happens to me. Is I'll go through my day. I don't drink as much of this bottle of water, and I'm slamming coffees in the morning, right? I got a little Americano here. I'm gonna have a couple of these, uh, and then I'll go coach. I'll see John here in a little bit, and then I'll probably crush another coffee. And then after noon is when I start to drink water for the most part. Not great, right? But what happens towards the end of the day? I am parched, right? My mouth is freaking sandpaper. And so I just end up chugging like a full bottle of water right before I go to bed. Well, guess what's going to happen around 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, right? I got to get up and go use the bathroom. These are all things that are completely preventable, right? And going to use the bathroom in the middle of the night seems very innocent, right? Not a huge deal. However, it starts to stack up. For older adults, it stacks up exponentially. It disturbs your sleep, so your sleep quality goes down, your ability to recover goes down. You put yourself in a somewhat risky situation for many where their risk of a fall is elevated. It's dark, they're groggy, they may not be able to see, they may not take the time to put on their corrective lenses. A lot of falls are going to happen at night when folks have to go up and get to use the bathroom. We can combat that by consuming those fluids earlier on in the day. That's the first thing. The next thing is we want to be very thoughtful of limiting our bladder irritants, caffeine, alcohol, especially right before we're going to be going to bed. So, limiting alcohol, within a few hours of when you're going to go to bed, limiting fluids in general as well, maybe an hour or two before you're going to go to bed. If you really wind down your consumption of fluids before bed, then you're going to be able to probably get better sleep, longer sleep, and reduce how many times you're having to get up in the middle of the night. This is obviously complicated with medications. A diuretic, for example, is going to challenge things. But by and large, we're trying to consume those fluids earlier on in the day. And it shakes out that the 8 glasses of water per day is a really good recommendation for the vast majority of individuals. There's obviously some varying demands based on body weight, but it's not like a huge fluctuation. So you can be pretty confident in saying, just get 8 glasses of water, 8 ounce glasses of water per day, and you're going to be good to go. And you can, make some recommendations based on a water bottle, 3 of these per day, whatever it may be. But you can give that tangible advice. Just make sure that they're consuming that a little bit on the earlier side of the day. So those are the 3 things. It's simple, y'all. I know they're gonna come to you asking you about beetroot extract and why they need to put cinnamon and turmeric in everything, right? They're gonna probably ask about creatine, which is amazing, but most folks, they're majoring in the minors, and what they need to focus on is get these majors or these big rocks down first. Are they eating a balanced meal with lots of fruits and vegetables? And maybe lowering those starches traditionally compared to what they're used to, right? Are they getting enough protein support all this exercise and this fitness forward approach that you are providing to improve the results that they're getting? And then are they hydrating to help with their recovery, their overall function, and to improve their sleep quality while they're also reducing their risk of a fall at night? Those are the big 3 things. Once people nail that down, yeah, let's start talking about your beetroot extract after that, but not until we got these 3 things. If you want this handout, if you want to hand out to your folks, I'm going to drop it in the comments of this video. If you're listening on the podcast, we do these live within the Ice Physio app. So just go in to the Ice Physio app, go to PT on Ice Daily Show. You can hit past episodes and look for nutrition for older adults, and you will see it there. I will also link this in the podcast notes as well. You have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll talk to you soon.